Policy and Government Relations Committee meeting of the School District of Waukesha Board of Education. I call the meeting to order. We'll start with verification of meeting posting. Julie, can you please verify that the meeting has been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Mike. Thank you very much. All right. We've come to the section in our meeting where we provide an opportunity for citizens to speak. Do we have any speakers tonight?
We do not.
All right. So that we can move on to our first action item of the evening. That is the minute approval from the November 2024 Policy and Government Relations Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion by Mrs. White. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Brooks. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, minute approval passes 5-0. All right, next on the agenda, we move to policy discussion and information section. Our first item is, we have three items in a row, all technical corrections. That would be items 1, 2, and 3 on the agenda. I don't know, Dr. Siebert, did you want to approach each one individually, or did you just want to run through the whole list, or?
It's up to you, Mr. Watt. I can do it either way. What if I just do each one and then see if anybody has any
Sounds good.
questions?
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah, that'll be great. Good evening. The first one, a technical correction, is to policy 5460, which is graduation requirements. This one has been recently updated in the Teaching and Learning Committee to incorporate the financial literacy requirement. And when we created a new chart in that policy, we put when it was required prior to the class of 2028 and what was required for the class of 2028 and beyond. In the original policy, we only put it on the top of the chart, and so the policy goes multiple pages, and it was confusing to read. We were getting feedback from the high schools that once you got past the first page, you didn't know what the columns meant. So the simple technical correction is just to put that heading that I described at the top of each page, and so it's on the top of 3 pages, and it makes the policy much more easy to read for the consumer.
Great, thank you, Dr. Siebert. Mrs. White?
And I can't see any reason to have any questions about that. It's just a matter of clarity.
Yes, exactly. So thank you, Mrs. White. The second one is policy 4440, job-related expenses. And all this one does is, in the past, it had referenced board policy 6100. It just adds the name of the policy to the actual context of the policy, which is the words federal funds.
Great, thank you, Dr. Siebert.
And then the last one is policy, as it currently stands, 9150.01, elected officials speaking in schools or to students. This is a Waukesha-specific policy. It's currently numbered as, let me just get to it here, 2522. It's a Waukesha-specific policy, and it was in the 2000s. There is another policy that should be numbered that, so Neola recommended that we renumber it to 9150.01, which puts it then right behind our school visitors policy in the 9000s, which makes sense, we thought, for us.
Thank you, Dr. Siebert. Any questions on that or any of the other technical corrections? All right, thank you very much.
I just got one.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Browski.
So on that last policy you'd mentioned, I know it's just a numbering change, but now that I'm looking at, well, I guess are we even looking at the policies?
So we don't crack open the
Yeah.
policy itself. Certainly, if you wanted to discuss something, we could bring it back as a future agenda item.
I mean, it wasn't a huge item, but, I mean, I could speak with you individually and we could
Okay.
go from there maybe.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Browski. Anyone else? All right. That takes us to item 4, broadcasting and recording meetings, overview, and discussion. So, Dr. Siebert?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Watt. So, Mr. Watt and I have had some conversations around a couple of the policies that we have in the 9000 series. Those were included in board docs for you, 9120 Public Information Program and 9121 Cable Channel. And we've had some discussion as well around criteria, if you will, around broadcasting and recording of various committee and board meetings. We have with us the great fortune of Chief Information Officer Steve Schloman, who is our best knowledge system of all of those pieces. So I'm going to invite him to the table. We had a few things that Mr. Watt and I had talked about that Steve's ready to be prepared to talk to you about, kind of how we do the recording, why we do the recording, the methods that we use, and the YouTube, I just can't think of what it would be, the source platform, there you go, thank you, Mr. Watt. So he'll maybe just start in that fashion, kind of overviewing some of those pieces, and then it's wide open for you to ask any questions, kind of with the thought of, Mr. Watt and I thought, do we start with this type of a discussion, and feel free to add anything you like, to then inform if any discussion or any consideration should be made to modifying those policies, either one of them, to reflect some more current trends.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Siebert. I think that's exactly right. For me, it was, one of the things was we have a policy related to the TV cable channel, and I don't believe we've been broadcasting over the TV cable network offered by at least Spectrum in the city of Waukesha for some time. So that just prompted a number of other questions as to, is that policy obsolete now? Do we need to look at making that available to, again, those sorts of things? So we thought that we could have Mr. Schloman come in, talk to us about the technology behind that, also the way that we're currently providing both a live stream and recordings of our meetings, and give us an opportunity to learn more about that and see if there's anything we need to do to sort of revise our policy to be consistent with what we're actually doing today, which might be the next step if we were to decide that's the right direction to go.
Sounds good.
So welcome, Mr. Schloman.
Thank you. So you are correct. We have not been broadcasting over Spectrum cable since we moved out of the Lindholm building. That was the uplink for Spectrum cable is still in the Lindholm building, and we did make an attempt to use that after we moved to this building. Unfortunately, that uplink failed. It's non-functional, and we reached out to Spectrum on that, and the cost that we would incur to repair that link was cost prohibitive to what the viewership we have on, our estimate is viewership on the actual dedicated cable channel in the city is quite low now.
I'm sorry, do you remember what the cost was, just off the top of your head?
I think it was around $15,000 to get that repaired. I never really got an accurate estimate. They were just kind of ballparking that. It's actually quite difficult to reach anybody at Spectrum locally that can deal with those kind of issues. Pretty much, if you're in the tech support at Spectrum, you're somewhere in the world, who knows where, and to filter back to local folks is very difficult these days. So we started broadcasting on YouTube, live streaming on YouTube, I would say about 10 years ago now. We did that when we did our last upgrade of our boardroom. When we moved off of, we used to record, way back, if you're in the Wayback Machine, we used to record on VCR tape, and then we moved to actually recording DVDs. So if you're in this back room back here, if you want to take a walk down memory lane, you can go in there, and there's all kinds of DVDs of board meetings that we crack out once in a while if someone needs something. Once we stopped that and upgraded our board room 2 iterations ago now, we went to YouTube live streaming at that time. At that time, YouTube was really the premier vehicle for live stream. That was way before Facebook or any of those live streams took off. And so that was really the reason we chose YouTube. It was really the vehicle at the time that existed, and it was it was in our ballpark for price range, which was $0. We adopted that, and since then it's been. We've had very little problems with our YouTube channel. There's really only been a couple of times. We used to do a lot more programming on that channel. We used to rebroadcast NASA. When NASA had their NASA channel, we would pick that up and rebroadcast that. And there was some other programming that Mark Blackman used to do on that. We did run into a couple of issues where YouTube gave us some warnings about copyright infringement on some issues, and so we stopped rebroadcasting a lot of that stuff because it was really available to the public on YouTube and other areas anyway. So we sort of stopped trying to manufacture content. We currently run, if you're not watching the board meetings live, our other content is pretty much a digital signage that we run 24/7 on the channel, and that is pretty much events that are happening around the district. And so it's the same thing when you see in the boardroom when you walk in before the board meetings. That's the YouTube channel that's running there. So it's pretty basic, pretty easy to maintain. The most difficult thing for us is just getting the actual content from the schools, what's happening, things like that. So it's the same difficulty that our public relations folks have sometimes. It's just like getting current content and keeping up to date on that. So that would, let's see, what other questions did you have here? Other platforms, there are many other platforms besides YouTube now. There's Twitch, there's Facebook, there's TikTok, of course. So these are all potentially platforms we could use, but we really stayed with YouTube because I would say YouTube is the premier streaming service yet. It really fits our content. We use YouTube a lot in the schools. There's a lot of educational material. There's a lot of garbage on YouTube, but there's also a lot of really good content out there. And we also pretty much block most of the social media sites on our district devices. So YouTube is one that we allow. So it just kind of fits in our niche. So that's one of the reasons we've not really even considered moving off of that.
Is there any cost that we incur either for the storage of our recorded material or to do the live stream, or is it?
No, not from YouTube, no. We have costs, obviously, our encoding equipment.
Sure.
But nothing, and there's no subscription cost YouTube-wise.
Right. Okay. All right, great. Anyone have any questions or anything they wanted to ask? Yes, Mr. Harlan.
So, do we have any historic viewership numbers of the cable channel compared to our YouTube viewings?
YouTube, we have numbers. They're readily available when we watch the channel. We can see, depending on what's happening at the meetings, we'll have hundreds of people on there. And then we get a lot of replays as well, because once it's recorded, it's uploaded so that they can be rewatched. We never did get any kind of data like that out of the cable channel. First of all, I think at that time they really didn't have any mechanisms for seeing that because it was analog cable, so they didn't really know who was legally watching it, who was stealing it, who was anything like that. So now they do, I think, especially because cable TV is a dying animal, and even Spectrum is moving more towards streaming, and they can get analytics off of that now. So, but yeah, we didn't really get any of that feedback from cable. The only way we would really know is we'd get phone calls, like, hey, the cable channel's down, we want to watch the board meeting. And we really got, after we stopped that, we got calls from maybe like 3 people. One of them is sitting in this room.
I was gonna say, I was wondering,
And the first question I got from a constituent after I was sworn into the board was someone calling me and asking what I could do to get the. So this has always been one of my little
Yeah.
pet issues is, what is actually the status of that? I mean, from my perspective, said it yourself, cable's a dying animal, and, I think the streaming offers so much more, that I don't know that there would be, even if it wasn't $15,000 to bring that uplink back, just the administration of that seems to me to be
Yeah.
sort of it's gone the way of the buggy whip now, right?
Yeah,
So-
and even the image quality was
Right.
so bad compared to what we are. At that time, we're like, well, it's pretty good. But now when we went to HD and live stream, it's like, holy cow. It's nowhere close to what we are today.
Yeah. I have a couple of other questions that center more around capability for live streaming. Things that, whether it's going on in the district or things that the board may be doing that may not be going on in this boardroom. What kind of capabilities do we have for any sort of remote events to be able to mic and stream those when they occur, or at the very least, to produce a, good copy that could be made available if there was things that we were doing in the community that we felt it was important for the community to be able to access if they couldn't attend in person.
It's a lot easier now than it ever was to do that. Our 3 main, our graduations are our major events that we do outside the boardroom. We do those every year, live stream, and we do them through YouTube channel, same way. Basically, what we need is a camera and a computer that encodes, and we have 2 of those setups, and usually we have one of our co-ops do one, and I usually do a couple, and so we switch off. But we could do that. We have done, especially during COVID, we did a lot of Christmas concerts, we did concerts. So we could do those. Our really big limiting factor is personnel, right? Is getting folks to be able to do that for us. It's difficult. Andrew's back here. He's been very good so far, but it's difficult to even actually get students to take the job. I've had to work on my marketing just to advertise and get students that are interested in doing the
Right.
job. So.
Right.
And there's a lot of conflicts in terms of their extracurriculars or after-school activities, things like that. So that'd be the big limiting factor. We could do as much as you wanted to. It would just be having personnel to do it.
Sure. And I guess from my perspective, one of the things that kind of triggered this thought for me was there have been a couple of different times where we've had information sessions that that the district administration has done, where there have been, there's been a pretty healthy public attendance, but people who may not have been able to attend that night weren't ever able to go back and watch. And I think about whether it was the Hatfield merger or it was some of the public information sessions around PLP. I think, there was clearly an appetite for people to have that information, and I wondered if the limitation for something like that was more technology-centered or people-centered, and it sounds like it's more a people issue than it is a technology issue.
You can stream fairly good quality right off your cell phone now. It's not difficult to do any longer. It's just getting qualified folks to do what you want them to do, basically. So.
Mrs. White?
And I know that at the Whittier hearings, there were, just members in the audience that were just doing off their cell phone. You know, that there definitely were
Yeah.
recordings being made, but it was not anything that was official, and, it was just a, kind of very impromptu, kind of variation on it. My actual question is, there's live stream going on for like sporting events? Football, basketball-ish kinds of things? How do we monitor that, and who's doing those broadcasts?
Those are actually done robotically, so they have a camera that's called a huddle cam. It's got AI in it, if you want to talk about cool technology, and basically it tracks movement of the ball or tracks movement. And we don't do anything with that other than the fact that the athletic directors schedule those events, the cameras turn on, and they track the thing, and then they turn off, basically. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing, that piece. So, yeah. They have those in all of the stadiums, all the high school stadiums, and also all of the field houses. They have those. If you look up, they're like a little white box. They're square, about this big, so.
But that's totally nothing that you deal with at all?
Yeah, we don't interact with them at all, other than we help them set up on the network when they install, but then it's totally hands-off for us. We don't need to do anything with them.
Interesting.
Does that go through the YouTube platform?
It does. Generally, it goes through the school's YouTube channels, doesn't go through the district YouTube channel. They also, they also have a paid service too. So you can, depending on what event they're doing, they may be charging for it, so.
Mr. Borowski?
Yes, along the lines of Mr. Wad's idea of potentially, recording other important informational sessions or whatnot, if a board member or administrative employee wanted to, or thought it was important, are they contacting you? Not that I want to start a big, long, request for your services or these services, but would we go to you to at least suggest it and then see if you can potentially cover that, or what would?
The official channels would be go through Dr. Siebert first. I kind of take my direction from him.
Sure.
And then generally, if someone at the school reaches out, they used to reach out to Mr. Blackman to do that. Now, I think you've seen Jonathan Howfinger is taking over for Mr. Blackman. He was here today, earlier in the first meeting. He's a former co-op that we had, South grad, now graduated from Menominee, and now he's back working in the area as an AV system integrator. And so we've got him part-time now, just kind of run our program.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brooks?
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of getting back to the conversation around the using YouTube as the source of streaming. I definitely agree. I think it's just easy for members of the public to use. You don't need to sign up for a separate account for anything. It's pretty, as a board member, I definitely use it when I want to watch a committee meeting that I wasn't able to make, or go back and see what I catch up on something from a previous committee, or show somebody else in the public who asked a question, hey, here's where you can find this answer. Have we given any thought into possibly trying to timestamp some of the meetings? So for example, we've had some longer meetings where we can essentially go off of the agenda items that we have on our board docs and say, at 5 minutes in, this is where we start conversation around item 1, and kind of so on. Because I think, just as a board member, selfishly, that would be helpful in some ways, where if there's a specific item that I want to go back and review. But especially for members of the public or members of the press who are trying to kind of go in and find something from a meeting, I think it'd be a helpful tool to direct them to, hey, if you go to the 17-minute mark, this is the conversation around PLPs, or whatever that issue might be.
Along those lines, I have seen on other YouTube videos, they're actually chaptered. So they have a little, if there's a little arrow there, you push on it, and it'll tell you all the different chapters to that presentation, and you can choose it. It doesn't even have to be a timestamp, but I kind of wondered the same thing. And I'm curious what.
Yeah, our videos are transcripted, so if you look, if you pop up the transcript window, it gives you a running transcript of all the speaking, and you can, it does, they're not chaptered, so to speak, somebody has to actually go in and divide that, but you can search through the text for like a specific phrase that you're looking for, and it will get you to that spot in the video, so.
So along those lines, if I could, as a follow-up, there must be some process of doing some amount of editing. And the reason I say this is because I can think of a couple of different incidents where I may have been watching at home live. This would have been before I was a board member, obviously, but where there was an event that happened, and when I went back to look at it in the recording the following day, it was no longer there, like it had been edited out. Who is responsible for those decisions on what is or isn't included in the recording that's may have been broadcast live at the time that it occurred?
So I would say 99.9% of the time, we don't even touch those videos. They're automatically uploaded. There may be an instance where we edit out some long duration of something that was, not actually meeting content. Let's say it was dead space because something went wrong technically with the equipment or something like that. I can't think of an instance where, I could say no one's ever asked us take this out, and we certainly would not do that unless we were directed by Dr. Siebert or somebody to do that.
So that's interesting, because I'm thinking of a specific incident. I know a lot of people who were quite upset that this event that had aired live was not included in the recording that was available the next day, and it goes back to a contentious meeting during the COVID era back at Lindholm, when there was a special meeting to discuss removal of mitigation requirements under COVID, and a number of people that were in the audience that night refused to put their masks on, and the board president at the time would not start the meeting, and there was this showdown between those in the gallery and the board president as to where we go from here. It was, I think, an important and, I would suggest, historical part of that saga at the school district of Waukesha. And I had a lot of people who were very concerned about the fact that that was edited out. And there have been other things where there may have been outbursts by people that were in attendance that were edited out, yet there were people that were here, that were in the gallery, that were able to witness it. And if you weren't watching live, you're sort of deprived of that opportunity to see some of those events, which were newsworthy or were of public interest, I think. So I was just trying to get a better handle on how do we make those decisions when video gets uploaded back to YouTube. In terms of, I get if there are technical difficulties, there's obviously no reason to air that, but, and there's just nothing for anyone to see, but I'm kind of wondering more about actual live events that occur in the boardroom that don't make it to the YouTube copy.
Well, I can tell you that technically the way the system works is there's a video recorder that sits in the room back there, and that is the same piece of equipment that's live streaming. So it's essentially recording everything that's live streaming. If they pressed a button here to say close session or pause, it stops recording and it stops live streaming. So if someone saw something on the live stream, not somebody sitting in the room here now, right? That would be a different thing. But if somebody saw something on the live stream and somebody then looked at the recording and it was different, that it had to have been edited, because that's technically the way it works. Not like I can tell you, I'm not aware of that happening. It is possible, because I wasn't in the room at the time, it
Sure.
is possible that someone said, stop the recording. I wasn't there, so I wouldn't be able to tell you if that was the case. But if it was edited, I certainly think I would know about it. Somebody would have asked me if that was okay to do. Because I mean, nobody in the department's gonna take that and say, oh, I'm just gonna go edit that without actually consulting with me first.
Okay. And I don't mean to have a whole, like inquiry on that particular event. It was just more broadly, I've, thought personally, and I've talked to others who agree that if it happens in the boardroom and it's been broadcast live on the live stream, it should be a part of the recording that goes out.
I mean, it is a public record,
Right.
so, and we're not going to edit the public record essentially,
Yeah,
so.
okay.
At least, not to my knowledge, we will.
Sure, of course not.
So,
Dr. Seaver?
I can, to your point, I can remember a couple of times.
Dr. Seaberg, you want to turn your microphone on? Sorry.
I hit, oh, my bad. Here we go. I can remember a couple of times at Lindholm where the board president made the decision, like, let's stop this right now, let's pause this right now. And that might be to what you're talking about, but per our discussion too, that might be something we want to build in to a policy, right? That we don't do that. I think sometimes it's, you get into situations as individuals, any of us could get into it, and it's a difficult decision at the time to decide, how you want to handle it.
Mrs. White?
But I think the concept of public record, like that policy would be in effect here as well, because our meetings are public record. And, it isn't something that you could edit out without, I don't know how you make that legal to get rid of something that's supposed to be part of the public record.
I would say you wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't want to make this too much on just this subject, but I believe what's part of the public record is what happens from the time the meeting is in order until it's not. And in the case of that COVID mitigation meeting, I believe the president I can't remember if he had called the meeting to order or not, but filming had started. I know people at home saw it, and it was on the recording at first on the following morning. There was the whole conversation, but I don't think the meeting was technically in order yet. And a couple of other situations, I know when there were disruptions in the boardroom, the board had gone to recess while the situations were brought under control and dealt with. But if you were watching live, the video was not shut off when it went to recess, at least not right away. So a lot of what was seen on the live stream was then not there, which made me wonder if that's part of the editing process, is to go specifically from in order to in recess, back to in session to adjournment, right? Is there someone responsible for that?
The answer would be no.
Okay.
It automatically, any of the standard committee and board meetings automatically load up to YouTube around midnight, I think, and then they're there in the morning, basically. So we don't edit those. The only time we would edit or not do that is it's a special board meeting that is not in our sequence. Then
Right.
that might be edited and loaded possibly.
Any other yes, Mrs. White?
So are we thinking of deleting 9121, the whole concept of the cable channel, and that would not be anything that would really
Well,
impact?
so, I mean, my opinion on that is the word cable probably isn't appropriate anymore, but we still have a channel. We still have a YouTube channel that we're still broadcasting, but just not doing it over traditional cable TV. So,
So I think there's a couple of different ways we could go with this. Dr. Siebert and I discussed the fact that we do have a policy, 9120, which talks about public information program. And then we have the one that talks about cable channel, which seems specific to what had been the method previously of putting it over the public access channel on Spectrum.
2017 style.
Yeah, and that's policy 9121. So one of the things that we had kind of thought about was, do we want to bring 9120, right? Do I have that number right? 9120, current with what we're doing relative to YouTube, maybe get rid of 9121 because it seems so specific. But I do think we want to, I think it would be good if we were to sort of put into policy generally what we're doing and kind of some of the things that we think may or may not be, we want to make sure we're doing if we are in fact going to broadcast and live stream and record our events. And I think that those are kind of different discussions, and we certainly can throw some of that around tonight. I hit on a couple of things I'm concerned about, obviously, but people may have other ideas. What meetings, have to be live streamed, provided that we have the technical capability to do it. So, yes, Mrs. White.
And I think now it's for the first time recently since we're here at Blair, we are actually able to see the HR meetings. And those are because they're part of, not the typical kind of recording, but just having the meeting be WebEx, I think is what you're using, right, for that broadcast? Yeah.
Which then gets uploaded to YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Right?
It's live. It's live streamed to YouTube, and then it's recorded on.
Through that platform.
You're right.
Yeah, okay.
We were lucky enough to figure out how to do that so that we didn't have to have somebody operate that, and we could do it in the room there, so, yep.
But yeah, so things like that, Mrs. Voigt, where we didn't for a long time have HR, because we had some technical limitations, or, one of the reasons I brought up the ability to do off-site stuff, if we do informational sessions, which I'm sure we will do again in the future, maybe not in the so distant future, or things around, editing and what, or do we need to have rules around what is or isn't allowed to be removed from the recording that went out over the live stream, or decision, the authority of the board or presiding member to decide to cut the feed for whatever reason, right? Do we need any sort of rules around that? Now, the fact that we have an open meeting that people can attend in person probably removes some of the, like, you absolutely have to do this. I don't know that there's open records rules around what you do with a recording, provided that you have an open room that the citizenry can attend. It's a different matter if we ever find ourselves in a situation where, for whatever reason, we're not allowed or can't have members of the public in the boardroom. I hope we never find ourselves in that situation again. But that may change the fact that we have to provide then the meetings through a broadcast vehicle, which is, I think, what happened during COVID when, people weren't allowed to come into the boardroom besides the members. But those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about, and there are probably lots of other things we could consider in terms of either guidelines or policy around how we do this. I do think it's a vital component to keeping our public informed about what's going on. I think the view numbers that I see on our meetings suggest it gets a pretty good viewing. Our committee meetings and board meeting alike get pretty good views most months, in the hundreds, if not in the low thousands. So I think it's something that we probably should have some sort of policy guidelines around and have it reflect what we're doing today or what we would aspire to do going forward.
Maybe that's something that Dr. Siebert can, I guess, consider, or maybe along with you, and bring back to the board of updating 9120, and then maybe is there anything in 9121 that you would incorporate into 9120
Perhaps.
and streamline it?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think and I don't know whether we can get that back by January, or we want to take a little bit more time to get it back, but I do think it's something, and I would encourage any of you, if you have suggestions or ideas about things we need to consider when we're putting something like that together. I mean, obviously, we'll have a discussion period here, but, send them along to me or Dr. Siebert, and we'll make sure those get included as we're thinking about that policy going forward.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Arnold.
So, following back up on the broadcast of the individual school athletic events, is there any specific policy regarding those that we can look towards to kind of mirror that for this?
No, I don't believe there is, Mr. Harlan. Those are kind of, to Mr. Schloman's point, kind of outside of the district, I would almost say, because of that huddle platform, and all schools use that because they also use it for scouting and researching each other, so everybody is on the same platform. If we wanted to work something into a policy on that, I'm certain we could through this vehicle tube in terms of public information. We'd have to investigate that a little deeper, I think.
Thank you.
This is looking like it's 2017 our use of the system like NOLA. So but I'm wondering, is there language that would pertain to public information that we could look to them as a guide? Like there must be other schools around the state of Wisconsin that are concerned about their public information programs, that there might be language out there, even though we're not using I can't say it today. Neola in this process.
So Julie, I think this is a Neola policy, so we just.
It just doesn't
yeah,
reference it as such.
Yeah, when we
Okay.
Neola came to Waukesha in 2017, so that's,
So was, okay.
yeah, anything we haven't made an adjustment to is always going to be February 8th, 2017, for the most part.
Okay.
That was when
Before my
we
time.
transitioned, yes. So it is a Neola policy, but I think you've had some good discussion tonight. I think between Mr. Wad and Mr. Schloman and I think we can start to craft some pieces together for at least your consideration to start with, and then you can tweak and I would think potentially we could have something by January.
Anyone else have anything on this before we move on? All right. We have no discussion and possible action items for this evening, so we'll move on to the government relations discussion, information items. Dr. Siebert, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about the state budget update.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Watt. I thought what we could probably do month by month now is kind of keep an eye on where the budget is going to go. The only thing I really have to talk about tonight is the governor is hosting 5 budget listening sessions. In the first, there have been a few already. We have one tomorrow night in Milwaukee from 5:30 to 7 at Thrive on King. And there's also a virtual one that's scheduled for Monday, December 16th from 4 to 5:30. I included some information for you to see on those. Other than that, January-ish is when he'll make his, and help me out as you may, Mr. Brooks, January is when he'll probably put his budget proposal out, right, January, February, sometime in there. The Joint Finance Commission isn't put together yet, but it will be. The leaders are been established, so that'll be coming. And then it'll probably be the spring into the summer when we're talking about finalizing sometime June, July, ideally, but time will tell. Mr. Brooks?
Yeah, I think that's a fair description of it. So for folks who aren't familiar with our state budget process, we do biennial budgeting in the state of Wisconsin. So in odd number years, we will do the budget process. To Dr. Siebert's point, the governor will typically do their budget address sometime in middle January, sometimes early February, just depending on what's going on. He'll propose his budget. The Joint Committee on Finance will kind of take a look at that, and they have the ability to adopt things that they like or start from scratch or go through that process. In addition to the listening sessions that the governor is doing. Typically, you will see in that kind of early spring through kind of like April, May-ish period where the finance committee will do, they call it their budget roadshow, and so they do a bunch of public kind of town hall listening sessions, which are always, if you're interested in that kind of thing, definitely worth going to. They can take some time, so if you're interested in speaking, I recommend getting there early. I know 2 years ago we did one at the, I think it was at the Expo Center here in Waukesha. So they always try to do one in South, it might not necessarily be Waukesha, but somewhere in southeastern Wisconsin. They want to allow everybody in the state to have their voices heard. And the state senate has named their finance members. In fact, State Senator Bradley, who was just here last month, he was named to joint finance. So that's exciting to have somebody who represents the school district of Waukesha on that committee. And I'm very excited to have him there. And I know the assembly side of things there, we should be getting that finalized in, a few weeks' time, hopefully. So, yeah, it's heating up. It's going to be coming at us quicker than I think people, it always creeps up on you, but it's important to pay attention to. And like I said, we should have an opportunity somewhere in southeastern Wisconsin for folks in this community who are interested in or following along to either go and attend and just kind of listen to the perspectives or register and speak about what they think should be the priorities of the state budget. So definitely encourage all of our members of the community here in School District of Waukesha to get involved.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Any other comments or questions related to the budget update? All right, seeing none, we're on to other business. Do we have any recommendations for future meetings? All right, seeing none, I believe we have completed all of our business, and we are hereby adjourned. Thanks, everybody.